Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Making Like Two Humans Being. We had a week off last week because Kate was on retreat, so we're so excited to be back. And today, oh my gosh, so much happened while Kate was gone. I'm so glad she's back. So today we're going to talk about boundaries and something that I'm struggling with, and you're going to hear me start to cough because this is triggering me. How do we set boundaries and stay present when something irritates you and you need to talk about reinforcing the boundary, make it clear that a boundary's been crossed? This is something I don't understand because I'm trying to be present when something happens or someone says something to me that triggers me, knowing that the trigger is my work, but however they're talking is their work. But still that talk continues. And so at some point, I used to just react. So at one point, when do I react? So this is my question today with Kate.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to apologize first of all, because we started talking about this and I was like, right, get the camera started, we can't do this again. And Julie rushes off and does her hair and I didn't. I'm sorry, because
you look great.
Yeah, I've just realized we've got like a stain, so you'll get to focus on that as well.
Okay.
But I didn't, because we're all friends here. Yeah. And I couldn't be bothered. I did, however, just put some lipstick on, so there you go.
Yeah.
And in my defense, I suspect Julie's just wearing underpants under the desk. I don't know what's going on there, so.
All right, fine. You wanted me to talk about that too. We'll talk about that too. The mullet style of dressing.
I think that's brilliant.
Yes, where it's Zoom appropriate on top, pajama bottoms on the bottom.
So is it a mullet, all business on top and party at the back? I just think I don't mind a mullet. I have to say I don't mind a mullet at all.
Bono used to wear a mullet back in the day. I'm okay with it.
I'm not sure that's a good reason, but okay. I was thinking more of German footballers, but there we go.
Oh,
and I love a Eurovision Song Contest haircut.
Okay.
There we go. Right. Okay. So much there. And we all struggle with it, but I think what we need to do is dissect the parts in that everybody needs healthy boundaries, right? And that's something that we both struggle with in A, understanding what a boundary is, for fuck's sake, B, holding boundaries. This is so interesting, Julie, because this is all the shit that happened on retreat was all about boundaries.
Oh, really? Oh, we haven't even talked about that. I've always made it about me so far. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Then, as Danielle, our teacher, kept telling us as we were going through coaching, and you especially, Julie, and all this issue you have about speaking, which is what's happening now. Every time you want to speak about it, you're getting choked up. It's okay to be angry, and we've been through this a few times because there's a bit of you that you've either been taught as a child that anger is not appropriate. There's also it's happening to me now. There's also this idea that as you learn your awareness and you start your spiritual path, that you think of anger as somehow being unpleasant and unspiritual and all of those things. And I think you and I really struggle, in the same way as we struggle with boundaries. This is the same struggle. It's like, well, what's okay and what isn't, what's appropriate and what's not. And I think the Abraham Hicks answer, and I'm guessing because this is a parabola, if that's the right word, hyperbole from what they've actually said, but I suspect there are no right answers. You actually have to find a way that's okay for you. But what I think when you're talking about I'm not sure that the situation you've described to me is necessarily the crossing of a boundary, because Danielle's definition of anger is that somebody has crossed a boundary.
Right. Yeah.
So the question is not about whether you get angry or not, because you can't help that, right? That happens because somebody has violated a boundary. It's your reaction to that anger and how I think you need to separate that from, so somebody's nipping your head, as they say in Scotland, about something, and you hold it. And I hear you're talking about your spouse. I hear you. I'm the same with Gary. I don't ignore it, but I'm okay. I'm not gonna let this get to me, and quite often in my case, it's not directed at me. He'll be bitching about the fucking economy, the price of oil, petrol, diesel, drivers. The world's full of shitheads, all of that, and I'll just be aha, aha, and I'll just be like, just and I've got really good and about his job, and I get used to the ups and the downs, and I take it for so long. And then something, who knows where that invisible trigger is, at some point I go, oh, for fuck's sake, would you just shut? And it'll be about nothing. And he'll go, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And like, have you been in a different house for the last week? You've been at this every single hour. So I hear you. And these are not even things that are directed at me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's that that bit. It's how do you, maybe there's lots of lessons in there. We can come back to this, but that's one thing as well. Is like your reaction to it. Managing your reaction is probably a lot to do with us not understanding at what point you go.
Mm-hmm.
So we let it get to a point where you go apoplectic, and they're left sitting there going, I have no idea what I did. And you're like, well, if you don't know, there's no point. We have no future together because I hate you and I can't live with you anymore. And I'm leaving, because that's what it gets to. And they're sitting there going, I don't know what happened here, but like Gary, I would like to record him. Actually, he's not been so bad since he's had blood pressure tablets.
Oh,
I know. Like they put him on. That's probably a bit personal. Is it beta blockers for migraines? Which is
really? Uh-huh.
yeah, and he's been a lot calmer since. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't know whether to go in and double his dose when he's not looking because he's getting crabby again. So anyway, right. So you explain your situation, Julian. We'll try and separate out the parts. I don't know that I explained that very well, but my point being, it's all very.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've had four. Here comes the cough. So I've been working really hard on when a tone is used with me. My husband's really good at using a specific tone with me that I've always, it's interesting because I can see the progression. So it was like he would say it and I would immediately think, oh, I'm bad. Oh, it's my fault, which actually I did a little separate video on that yesterday. I'm bad, it's my fault.
I know, I saw it because you come up first in my YouTube when I go to do yoga in the morning. Oh, look, Julie. Yeah, let's have a little bit of Julie this morning.
It's nice. I like that thought. Anyway, so I've been thinking about that part, but that's how it used to make me feel. Now it's like, as I'm realizing that I need to set boundaries, the reminder of angry as a sign that a boundary's been crossed, and work through the love the anger, as Matt Kahn would say, right? So that's a good reminder because I'd forgotten that bit. So thank you. As now when it happens, what I've been doing is realizing that the way he speaks to me is more his crap, not mine. It's still triggering me. Yep. Yeah.
It's still your crap, darling.
Well, yes.
I mean, yes, it is his crap. But if you truly thought it was his crap, it wouldn't affect you. You'd be like that. Oh, just go off in your room and have your little crap. I don't care.
Right.
It's triggering you because when you feel less than, anything that he says that makes you feel less than, you react to him. And it's the real basics.
Yeah.
Of you feeling, as still insecure about, because this came up about your work, how hard you're working. This is something that you're working really hard, and it's got to stop saying working, but you're working really hard to overcome your need to do. Because I've got a different sort of Brad. I mean, Gary, it's the same sort of thing. He'll just make a joke about, well, you're just sitting around all day, and I'll be like, less so now, because like that's not he's having fun with me now. I'm not saying necessarily that's the case, but the only reason that triggers you, right? So if Brad like blundered into the house and just went, the smell of that furniture polish is horrible, would you react to that? Well, okay, that's still a bit critical, isn't it? If he blundered in and said, if he came in and said, I really don't like your hair. No, it's not. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a comment where you would not give a shit. Was it your shoes? You said you bought some shoes. Or was that your sister? And you just don't care what someone else thinks. Was that you?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Do you like your hair, for example?
Yeah.
Okay, so if he came in and said your hair makes you look like a man, would you react?
Uh,
That's a bit triggering, actually. I
a
take
little
that
bit
back.
triggering. I would be, well, I mean, maybe not that one. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I understand your point. Like if he said something, and I get the furniture polish one, that's fine. Like I don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would just be like that, or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. You don't clean it.
We won't buy it again, but
Yeah.
you wouldn't stop using it. You'd just be like that. Well, next time I'll buy a different one. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? There would be no issue.
Right.
It's because he's poking at your soft spots,
Yeah.
intentionally or otherwise. Whether it's intentional or not, the goal that we're looking for, Julie, is that you don't react to it because it doesn't hurt. You can't. So we can address actually you're being a bit fucking rude and I need you to stop. I think but it's a separate conversation. The goal in life is that that you go, do you know what? I know I'm doing everything I need to do, and it's not good for me to panic about these things. And I know in my heart of hearts I am doing my best, and it's enough. Then, and it's easy to say, but it wouldn't trigger you. There will be things that even in the time we've been doing this that you have stopped being triggered about.
Yeah.
You just can't think of them right now.
No. Okay, so it's like when something's said to me and I experience an emotion, anger, let's say, hurt, that's my work right there. Where though in that is and understanding that that's also a signal that a boundary potentially
Yes. But the work doesn't happen at the moment of feeling angry, right? The work is the work. I hate this expression.
Yeah.
The growth that you do leads you to a point where you don't react. That's a separate not issue, but like it's a separate timeline for somebody poking you and you getting angry. When you've got angry, this is not now about there's an element of self-control and how you react, but that's not the time where you go, well, I can't believe I reacted to that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that still hurts, right? That still hurts. That's as much as it matters in terms of the longer term, getting to a point where you don't hurt. Oh, that still hurts, right? End of. How you then react to your partner is like a different, I think, area of growth.
Okay.
If you like, because right, okay, so Gary Van Warmerdam, I was talking to Maria's mum about this. In fact, I have a beautiful photo you want me to show you. This morning we were talking about it, and it's but Gary Van Warmerdam talks about going down like you're driving along and the first time you're looking for a turning and it's not marked and you don't see it, there's trees and you drive past so you drive past the first time. Now you may shout at yourself, it's completely pointless though, because you didn't know it was there, you didn't see it, right? Yeah. Second time you drive past it, you might be a bit sort of like, oh shit, I need to pay more attention because actually I remember there was that big tree and then there was another big tree and then there's a turning, right? Second time, third time, so on. But the point being, when you've driven past the exit, so if you think of that as you're trundling along, somebody triggers you, you have the opportunity to get off the path of I'm really fucking angry now, and you don't, right? So by the time you reacted, it's too late, you've missed the turning. So the learning is getting to a point where you anticipate that reaction, as in someone's gonna whenever people say things about blah, it upsets me, I'm gonna that sort of thing. Eventually you get to a point where you recognize what's happening, you can feel it coming, and it doesn't affect you, or hopefully you don't even see it coming because it doesn't matter. But either way, once you've got angry, you've missed that turning. There's no point being angry with yourself at that point. It's just like oh, okay, I missed that turning. Does that make sense?
That's a lot of sense. Yeah.
But it's a nice analogy to stop you, because we think we can sort of retract the anger.
Yeah.
You can't reverse back on a motorway to take a turning. It's like it's happened, accept it, move on, pay more attention next time, just so that you see it coming up. So for example, you probably know from your experiences with Brad at what time of day this conversation is likely to happen, like what part in your routine, when it's likely to happen, what and things like that. and then you maybe at that point you go, okay, so if he comes in and says something inappropriate, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. It'll be interesting to see how it affects me, keeping it all calm and light and everything like that. But you will eventually get to the point where you don't even need to prep yourself because he can't get you. Your goat is ungettable. That's the goal.
Okay. So is that's not the boundary though?
No.
Okay.
No.
So yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, and so there are all these interlocking parts. I'm not quite sure how we divide them up.
Yeah.
But yeah, boundary is someone does something, someone does something. So I suppose the boundary would be the fact that he's saying things that you think, and it's one thing for it to react, right? But if you feel that he's saying these things intentionally to not provoke you, but maybe poke you into some sort of action, that sort of thing. Do you need to yawn? If you need to yawn, yawn. You look like you need to yawn.
No. I was trying not to cough.
Just
Yes, no, I was taking breaths and swallowing, trying not to cough.
no, there was something. That's sneezing. I was going to say, look into light. I think that's sneezing. If you need to sneeze,
You
you look into the light.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the urge away. There's probably some calming things you can do in your mind. I'm not sure. We'll need to think about that.
Okay.
If
he's talking to me intentionally, is where you were.
What's that?
If he was saying things in.
Yes. So boundaries are hard, not least because
and I don't understand.
I don't know what's appropriate and what isn't. But
yeah.
So forget the spiritual perspective. Why are you saying things to upset me?
I say that, and then he tells me he's not, and I'm like, but you are. And then it becomes this whole thing, and I'm like, oh fuck, never mind, I'll just stop talking.
But it is a whole thing.
It is a whole thing. It is a whole thing. It's been a 22-year saga thing, and
So the closest I think with Gary, probably more equal analogy is Gary thinks I'm really messy and dirty, and I drop crumbs, and it makes me feel like a naughty little child, and like dirty, and stains on my shirts, and he'll actually say to me, "Are you going out like that?" Yeah, things like that. And does that bother me? It does. It's not as hurtful now.
mm-hmm.
But then you see, I'm the same as you because I'm not actually sure what's appropriate. Because on the one hand, I think I don't really want, if I'm going out on my own, fuck you, I'll dress as I like. Because he's like, what if you get run over? He says, I'm not going to tell anyone I know you.
Yeah.
But if I'm going out with him, then is it selfish of me to dress like a tramp, as he puts it? When I'm, does that embarrass him? Do I have some responsibility as a partner, not to make him feel ashamed of me? I don't know. It's like I don't know what the appropriate boundary is. But if somebody's why does he say it then? Why does he say he says it?
One response is that he's just joking, which I don't find it funny.
Okay, but I have told you time and time again, I don't think it's funny. Do you still think it's appropriate to make this comment when you know it upsets me?
Yeah, that's been a line of conversation and has gone nowhere.
Do you see though why there's no point working on this bit and you need to work on this bit?
Yeah, I just don't understand. I don't understand what a boundary is. I guess maybe it's something I'm not supposed to defend, because I have this idea in my head that a boundary is something I defend.
I think it is.
Okay.
So okay, two people with no boundaries discussing boundaries. This is interesting. Here's an example. Yeah, a boundary is I'm not going, any further than this, and you've upset me by doing that. So I think somebody continually poking fun at something that you find upsetting, he is crossing a boundary. I think that's clear. But I guess the bottom line is, if you can't get to a point where you're okay with that and it doesn't matter, and you can't change his behavior, you can explain it to him. You can, I mean, before we get into the spirituality, and I've had counseling and that, when the first time I had counseling about my mom, I think the counselor, it was on the phone, which was very weird in those days because you just didn't do stuff like that on the phone. I hated her. I was so angry with her. I realize now, because she was completely right. I just wasn't ready to hear it. And I was like, I was basically saying, I have to leave the country because I can't say no to my mother, so I have to just not be here. I was ready to move to Australia because she's like, well, just say no. And I was like, I can't, you know. She asks me to do things. She's my mother. I have to do them. She's a woman who lives on her own. And she says, well, you don't have to do them. And I was like, well, I do. And she's like, well, you don't. And I was like, well, I do. And you don't, you know, and I ended up getting really angry with her. But like, she would say things like, this maybe isn't the right example there, but she'd say, if you keep on talking like this, I'm going to hang up the phone, and then hang up the phone. That's a boundary. So that's a bad example about what my mother, but you know, if my mother got abusive, which is probably not such the same example, but so for example, you set a boundary with your sister, right, Lucas?
I think so.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
And basically when she pushed it, you went, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. So that is a boundary. So, well, congratulations. That's a boundary. And I think that is important to defend. I'm not prepared to discuss this anymore. It's like, if you've tried negotiating and it doesn't work, you then have to decide, do we make this a big thing, or do I just suck it up? We need a third party.
I know. We need people to weigh in on this, please. Please,
yeah.
comments.
We're going to do a live YouTube next week. Anybody with any boundaries whatsoever, please.
Yes. Date and time to be announced. Yes. Seriously.
I think it's okay to say to someone, I said to Gary yesterday, because energy, I'm not going to get into the whole thing because my guides keep telling me stop fucking talking about it. They didn't say fucking. Well, they did actually, because they're my guides. Stop fucking talking about it, because every time I do, you know, I have been ignoring the energy thing because there's nothing we can do. Like, I've been ignoring the petrol thing, but Gary just says that they're about to double again, which means oil and electricity will quadruple in price. And I was sort of like, oh my God, this is me having to rethink how much money I earn. Like, and because we're talking thousands a year now, thousands. And I'm just like, oh my, and I was like, I can't, because now I'm going into, oh my God, here's me trying to manifest, just making enough money just to tick along. And now we're talking about another, I suppose, because they're our two biggest bills, like, because we don't have a mortgage anymore. So petrol, oil, electricity at the top whack. And we're probably talking now about another £5,000 a year in bills. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, that means I have to find another 2.5 grand. You know, if Gary and I carry on like this, maybe this will be the point where I go, no, do you know what? You earn more money than me, you fucking pay it. Yeah. But I just said to him, I can't talk about this anymore, because I spiral into the whole, fuck, like fuck, what am I gonna do? I'm just getting my head together to survive on a lower income and actually possibly making that work. And now they're moving the goalposts, and there's nothing, you know, because there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not you can't not have heating. Yeah. So I said to him, we'll see how it goes, because it was only yesterday. I said, you have to just not talk about this. I said, because I can't, because I am beginning to spiral into that despair. And if I spiral into that despair, all bets are off, Gary. You may as well take my whole business and put it in the bin. Because if I'm that scared about money, I cannot manifest abundance when I'm scared of the fucking gas bill. So I said, there is no conversation we can have that ends well. So he's just discussing it with me, and we're outraged at the British government for doing nothing, that sort of thing. But it's like, I can't have it in my field of vision. So that's a boundary that I have set. I've requested we'll see how that goes. I was just like, I can't talk about it, so don't bring it up. But I believe you've had that conversation with Brad.
Yeah, multiple times.
Well, you can always up the stakes and threaten to leave them. I don't know. That's your parting shot. I think your jokes are shit. I'm going.
No, I can drive the RV now on my own, so I'm taking Ned and I'm out of here. No, that's the thing. Okay. So you said, so it feels, what I hear, what I'm understanding is you can set or request a boundary. When it's crossed, the emotions that arise or how I feel, that's an indication, or that is the work that I get, the growth, the opportunity for growth. We won't call it work, the opportunity for growth that I have. I don't necessarily have to, I don't have to defend that boundary, meaning I don't have to go right back at him or whoever's crossing it and telling them, you've crossed my boundary. I don't have to re-educate them. I just don't, how do I say this? I don't have to re-educate them. I don't have to defend it like this. It's just, I get to realize there's work there. And still,
right? But you're putting it all back on yourself, like that somehow you have to turn into this person who doesn't react. My point about that was that when you react, you've reacted. It's a fact. There's no work to be done about that. It's happened. How you choose to respond, how you choose to react, like you have the emotion, how you choose to react to the anger, that's maybe another area of growth. But I wouldn't look upon that as an active work thing. I think that's something that just happens as we evolve, as in being less and less. We shouldn't care what people think.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. But in terms of defending your boundary, I would say you can. Maybe the best thing to do is decide in advance what you're going to do. You can defend it along the lines of, I don't like it when you speak like that and leave the room, that sort of thing. Like, but I wouldn't get into a whole discussion about it, because it doesn't work.
No, because
it's more about, I requested that you don't say these things. You are persisting to say these things. I'm leaving this conversation. And try that, if only to get the point. And if anyone else wants better, please comment, because I don't know. If only to get the point across that it's not okay to keep crossing this boundary, because it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I guess the whole Abraham Hicks thing is, at the end of the day, if he doesn't moderate his behavior, the only person who you either leave or you get to a point where it doesn't bother you. Yeah. The irony being is, when you get to the point that it doesn't bother you, he won't do it.
Right.
There is that. And it's possible that if he does it for a reaction, that if you refuse to engage in it, he'll either understand that this is serious, Julie actually means this. I don't know. We probably need somebody qualified in this stuff. We could ask the guides.
We could ask the guides.
I don't know that I'm confident enough with things like this, because it's so close to.
Well, here's what I'm hearing. Just FYI, this is what I'm hearing. They're reminding me of the inner child conversation. So I'll tell the background of this, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. You're asking for permission, which is another thing we need to talk about at some point.
Okay, but it's nice to be polite.
Yes, I know.
That was something I learned on the retreat.
There is a whole shit show around permission, though. At least for me. So, and for women, there's a book I'm reading that we'll talk about too, I'm guessing at some point. Anyway, but they're reminding me of, so Matt Kahn wrote a new book called All for Love. Originally, I was not going to purchase it because I have other Matt Kahn books. I have a lot of books right now. I'm trying to manage my budget and not like, and I am a sucker for books, right? Oh God, they just smell good. Anyway, so, and bookstores are my calming places, even if they're online. Oh, they make me feel good. So I wasn't going to buy the book, but he did this promotion thing where if you bought the book and you sent the receipt in, he would channel a message for you and send it to you. And I got it last week while Kate was on retreat. So it's probably a good thing you were gone, because I was like, Kate, what do I do? There's the cough. So what Matt Kahn told me was that I have an opportunity to be honest and transparent with my inner child. And I have actually never worked with my inner child, because I, all along, and I had this conversation with another friend of mine last week too, because this was just like this whole thing was light bulbs going off everywhere. I've never actually talked to my inner child. I thought the inner child and your guides and source and all that was one and the same. And I learned last week, as I was telling Kate earlier, deep breath. I told Kate earlier today, I realized they're all parts of the same, but they're all different, right? So,
well, the inner child is hurt bits of you.
Yeah.
Rather than the source.
Okay.
It's the bits of us that get repressed. The hurt, they're usually hurt, because that's where you store your pain, but they usually stay at the age that the hurt happened. And you see, Matt Kahn would also, when people would do energy healing and talk about entities, he says that all entities are actually parts of us, which is another word for inner child, that have been disowned by us and need to be resurrected back into the soul. Didn't know that's what resurrected mean either, but there you go.
Oh yeah, there's a whole thing in A Course in Miracles about what resurrection really means, and atonement. Oh, it's the way language.
Oh, at one ment.
At one ment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, go on. So Matt Kahn.
So he told me this, and I had to watch his message to me several times, because it was very it was very different from anything that I had heard or had been practicing, and it really took me by surprise. So when I watched it, and I have to respond to him yet, I actually took the time and wrote a letter to my inner child, whom I saw, I always try to figure out the pronoun, whom I saw as actually a complete being of light, just smaller in size. The thing for me, and I hear what you're saying about the hurt bits, is I know now after this that I've actually been disconnected from that for so long. So it's hurt bits, but there's so much of it that I see it as this whole thing of light. So I wrote a letter to my inner child and described how afraid I am of all these different things, and I just was really honest with the fear I have around money. Hold on. Money, being seen, showing up for myself was a big one. Being transparent, being on all.
What does that mean, showing up for yourself?
Like stepping into who I am and what I'm meant to do. There is a passivity aspect. This cough is really going right now. There's a whole passivity thing I've always felt in my life. It is disconnected from who I meant to be, that real golden being of light. Stepping into that, I've kind of like waited for someone to go, okay, now you're ready, Julie. Okay, now. Or see, there you are. Now you're good enough. You've done all the work. Now you're worthy to step into it. There's not worthy. And so there's all of that. So I just wrote this whole letter. And so since then, every day I try to talk more about the inner child. And this cough that as of Friday will be 3 weeks of having this cough. This cough, I realized, it's triggered when I've stepped away from my power, my entity, my being, my truth, an inner child, like I aligned like right here with the inner child. If I'm focusing on something that doesn't honor me, if that makes sense, and I have to cough. So is that, where did we start with that as I described all that? The inner child. Oh, boundaries. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would just say that in my understanding of the inner child is not what you're aspiring to be. It's what you have become. It's part of you, part of your, I wouldn't say ego, but it's the bits that you leave behind that get hurt.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring them back, and basically most modalities are sort of like you identify the inner child, you acknowledge the inner child, you acknowledge that the reason they're making you feel that way is because they've been hurt and that you've ignored them in the past, and you're sorry that you've ignored them, and that's, you know, so that everything you said is fine, except you said, you sort of went like this and said, my inner child, I wouldn't, you can call it whatever you like, but generally speaking, the inner child is not what you aspire to be. The inner child is who you are with all your flaws and fears and all of that, and it's addressing the inner child with all the things that you said. It's like, I know you're frightened, and I know, you know, and usually you go back and you know, work out why it happened, when it happened, and it's about making that particular inner child feel heard and understood. And if it feels loved and understood, hopefully it will then be resurrected back into the soul. But you'll have gazillions of them. We all do.
Okay. Okay.
Some are louder than others.
Yeah. That makes sense, because I have, and that makes sense. And the disconnected from, now I realize how disconnected I am from from all of that. But when I do this too, like just even really who I ultimately am, when you said like accept all the flaws, like, yeah, because I've glossed over all of that.
Well, I think you're being a bit hard on yourself.
Oh, I'm always hard on myself. That's part of the workaround.
You know, all the work we do is just different ways of, I was going to say skinning a cat, but that's just such a horrible expression. It's lots of different ways of getting at the same thing, which is essentially some part of you that is hurt or misunderstood gets left behind, and you go back and reclaim it, if you like, and make it safe for that to come back into who you are. And hopefully, if you can reconcile with that inner child, the next time something happens that triggers it, it doesn't flare up, which is what happens, which is why when you get that reaction to anger or whatever, you go back to at whatever age that first happened and that first reaction, which is not the person you want to have in charge of an inflammatory conversation.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Hmm.
But you were saying about your guides, I think.
Oh yeah, because we were wanting to ask our guides about setting boundaries, and they said particularly my one main guide, he said go back to the inner child discussion as far as setting up the boundaries. Not setting up, I'm sorry, understanding what to do. Understanding what to do when a boundary is crossed.
Yeah, so when a boundary is crossed and react, it's usually an inner child that's reacting.
Yes, that's what he said.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
But so it's understanding that's the thing. So in theory, if you then looking at a different way, if you reconcile your inner child, then there's no inner child to react when someone says something that, you know, because you don't, it just doesn't, your goat is ungettable. You're just like, whatever. But how you behave about it, I guess, I mean, that just comes down, I don't know that there's a spiritual way to do it other than trying to treat someone with respect and explain to them that your feelings are hurt. What you choose to do if they continue to ignore that, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Another Abraham Hicks thing would be, well, you know, until you see the best in him, you're never going to get the best in him.
Right. I just had that little thing too, because you said respect, and So it's like
So we
you get what you receive what you give out. So it's like, okay,
yes,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So there is a bit of you that is still attracting. I am not worthy. I'm not working hard enough. I feel guilty about not working enough. I don't value myself enough. You know, so if maybe that's a way to turn it around. It's like instead of the anger at Brad, it's like, okay, so maybe I need to go away and make myself
Mm-hmm.
feel more worthy. You know, turning it around to what can I do to stop me putting that out there rather than him reacting to it, because you're getting from him what you're asking from him,
Mm-hmm.
whether you know it or not. That doesn't mean he doesn't need a good slap, Julie. That's a different conversation. But you know, this is the horrible, the wonderful, but horrible thing about being utterly and completely responsible for everything that happens to you. Is on the one hand, it's great because you can control everything. On the other hand, you're controlling everything. It's all down to you.
Mm-hmm.
Caveat being, if somebody continually disrespects you, don't, you know, get yourself out of the situation, obviously.
Yeah.
But in situations where you choose to be with somebody, you know, you're not going to get that respect from him until you respect yourself. It's that old adage that none of us really understood, that everyone just bandies about, which is unless you love yourself, you can never be loved. It's that, and all aspects that go with that. Until you respect yourself, until you honor your own worth, until you know all those things, you're not going to attract that from other people, which makes me wonder how any of us ended up with any sort of half decent partners at all, because we've not done badly really when you think of some relationships.
Oh, I know. It's very true. Yeah. It's just it's hard to the one that you look to for the most support and the most love and the most like unconditional love. And then you hear these things consistently. I know that's the yeah.
But you don't look for unconditional love,
I don't.
do you? Do you think any of us love anything unconditionally?
No, that's why we're working with animals to learn how to do
Yeah,
that.
I don't think people are capable of unconditional love, frankly. At least
Not yet.
not typically.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that you shouldn't set a boundary to say that, you know, I would really appreciate a level of respect. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get through to him on that level, like, you know, that raises a whole, I don't know. I don't know. I
Yeah.
guess it basically boils down to we can't control people. So you can ask nicely.
Mm-hmm.
You can show your displeasure when you don't get it, but don't get embroiled in a tit-for-tat argument about it. You're just not listening to this.
Okay.
And if they continue, I don't know, need to go away and work harder on all the reasons why you are worthy, so that you feel it. Basically, it doesn't really fucking matter what anyone else thinks of us.
Right.
It's what we think of ourselves. So if we pick that up on someone, it's because you somewhere deep inside you still believe that,
Mm-hmm.
which is not. It's much easier to blame other people.
Yeah. Right. Which again leads back to that. Oh, so I see also too why my guide who's sitting right here, why he was saying bring it back to the other child, because that disconnect that I've had for so long and waiting and being passive too. Like I see both things, like disconnected from the pain or the hurt, one, but then also if they make it better, the outside person, then I haven't taken advantage of the opportunity. I'm refraining from saying the word. I haven't taken advantage of the opportunity. I'm going to wait for someone to extend their hand and say, yes, Julie, you're okay. Now, see, it's fine. I'm going to treat you fine because I've already deemed you okay. So it's all of that too.
Yeah, which is, I mean, the temptation of going and finding someone who's just really lovely to you all the time is overwhelming, but I've yet to find that person. So, you know.
No, I know.
But then, you know, we asked for these people so they could keep pointing at us and telling us what we feel about ourselves.
That's a good reminder. That's right. We set all this up before we
Yeah. I need you to be a real pain in the ass and make sure that you keep bringing up how unworthy I feel. Thanks very much.
Yep. Yep. Oh.
The thing in the this is one of the really interesting. So they do some Buddhist teaching. It's quite, you know, it's want to say it's inoffensive. I mean, it's nice teaching. I know, I'm not a Buddhist, and you don't need to be to appreciate the teaching. But in one of the meditations they were doing, it's not specifically Buddhist, but obviously it's a Buddhist guy doing it, and it was about what is love. And I think he says it's Iris Murdoch, who I think is a Scottish author.
She is. She's lovely.
She wrote something about it's just actually just recognizing that there are people outside of yourself. It's that simple, of realizing that you are not the only person in the world. And I quite like that, because it sort of puts it it's taking out the whole romantic aspect. The whole romantic sexual aspect of love is about actually appreciating someone for being another human being. And we had to they do the metta bhavana, which is when you meditate and you're just basically bringing someone in and sitting down beside them, and you start with yourself, and then you bring in a friend, a good friend, not a sexual partner, but a good friend, and then you bring in a neutral person, and then you bring in not an adversary, but someone that perhaps you're not that keen on, and then you can bring in the whole world and all of that. But he just kept saying, and they made us sit and look into each other's eyes. That's just such a freaky thing to do. I find that really difficult. That's another discussion to have another day. But the phrase he used while we were then meditating is saying, and just rest your eyes on this beautiful, fragile human being. And immediately you use those words, you're like, we're all in the same mess, Julie. We're all just fucking trying to get by. When Brad's doing whatever he's doing and poking whatever, or Gary's ranting about the prices, we're not bad people. We're all just, when you think of that whether you and I may be a lot more aware of the pain that we're in, and we're not managing it. Well, we can't really expect them to.
Right.
Just that word fragile for me is enough for me to go, okay, because now it's no longer about them beating you up. It's about you going, oh, actually, that's really sad. We're all vulnerable, scared, lost human beings, and we're all just doing our best, and we don't always do it right. So that's something to think about. Yeah. Lucas has left. He's had enough of all these vulnerable human beings as well.
I know.
Yeah. So you're feeling sorry for yourself.
Right. I'm going out here. I'm going to lie down. Yeah.
That's all we've got time for today. Well, it isn't. Well, it is actually, because I actually have a reading. I'll talk about that after this. It's a very interesting discussion, and I expect Julie's on mute, still choking us.
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
Hopefully Julie's better next. It's actually brought up a whole pile of other stuff, because you would not believe the overlap with this and what happened to me on retreat. I'll talk to you about that as well, but it was all about boundaries. But interestingly, in a nutshell, I will just say that it made me realize that I need better boundaries, but I also don't want to be that person, because there are people who have really strong boundaries, and on the one hand I admire them, and on the other hand I was like, don't want to be that person either. So we're not all bad. So that was a very interesting discussion. If you have anything you'd like to add, and we could do with somebody who knows something about, I've got just the person, I'll ask her if she'll come on our show. She might feel ambushed though. Okay. Thanks everybody for watching. If you could subscribe in the links below, or you can follow us on Facebook, and do all of them. Instagram. We're not on TikTok yet, are we, Julie? No, I don't think we are.
No, we're going to talk about that.
Okay, so we are making light. Two humans being. I'm Kate Fogger. This is Julie Hurt, and thank you for watching.